So welcome everybody. My name is Mel Brown and I'm the Community Engagement Librarian Sustainability at Hobsons Bay Libraries, and welcome to tonight's Enviro Centre event. I would like to begin by acknowledging that depending on where you join me from tonight, we are potentially gathered on the traditional lands of many peoples. From my home, I host you from the lands of the Murrin a clan of the Wurundjeri people, and I would like to pay respect to their elders past, present and future, as well as those of the wider Kulin Nation whose boundaries cover the Hobsons Bay City Council area, where many of you are likely joining us from tonight, but not excluding all traditional owners whose lands we may be communally standing on this evening, being that you could be logging in from anywhere in Victoria, the country, even overseas maybe. Council acknowledges that long before this area was known as Hobsons Bay, our First Nations people had named its places, had hosted ancient ceremonies where learning flourished, where knowledge and resources were exchanged, and where healthy communities and relationships were sustained and adapted to changing environments. We recognise the unique role that diverse Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from many lands continue to play in the life of our city. We pay homage to that this evening, coming together to learn and to share, to sustain and to adapt. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. As I've said, the event will be recorded and we may be taking some snapshots of the audience on screen as well. So if you don't want to be in any of these, please make sure your video is turned off. As I've already said as well, we are going to be muting people during the event. There are going to be some times for questions though. So if you do have a question in the middle of our presentation tonight, if you want to pop it into the chat, I'll keep track of those questions. And then when Tanya breaks for a question time, I'll then ask you to come on, unmute yourself and ask your question. If you'd rather me ask a question for you, that's perfectly fine as well. Just let me know and I can ask that for you as well. So we'll have questions during the presentation and again at the end as well. So, but pop them in the presentation if you're worried that you might forget later on. So tonight's event is being brought to you by Hobsons Bay Libraries and the Enviro Centre, and just a very quick update. In line with state government roadmap for reopening that was announced last Sunday, 6th of September, there have been some changes to our library service. So all of our return chutes at all Hobsons Bay Library branches reopened last Monday, just gone, and everything that's currently on loan has been extended until the 26th of October. So don't feel it just because the chutes are open, you have to rush down to return the goods that you have on loan. They're open. If you're coming out doing your shopping or one of the other reasons to leave home, you're welcome to drop them off, but don't feel that there's no pressure to. And this week, our Book a Book home delivery and home library service has recommenced as well. Just keep in mind, there is quite a backlog from before we closed and quite a few reservations that came in while we were closed as well. So we're endeavouring to get everything out as quickly as we can, but be patient with us. We'll get them to you as soon as we possibly can. But tonight's event, though, is of course why we're all here. And I think clutter is something that bogs many of us down. Knowing how to manage it, to relieve the stress, to regain time and money in your life, tension in the household maybe, and to be more environmentally conscious are all important skills. Many decluttering workshops will have you pack up your items that you no longer want or need and discard them without much thought as to what happens to them next. Tonight we will be looking more at how we can stop the clutter from occurring in the first place, be personally responsible for the items we allow into our home, and therefore also responsible for what happens to them once we no longer want or need them. So tonight we are being joined by Planet Ark Ambassador, the Eco Organiser, Tanya Lewis. So please, I'm going to hand over to Tanya. Join me in welcoming Tanya tonight.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you. That was a great introduction. And thank you to everyone that's joined us here tonight. And I just want to apologise. I'm an absolute Luddite when it comes to all this online stuff. So apologies for my delay in coming to you tonight. But tonight there's lots of things that I'd like to share with you, and we have time together, which is fantastic, but it's precious time. So I really want to make the most of this time with you.
Sorry, Tanya, just before I'm going to interrupt you for one moment. You're actually sharing your screen at the moment, so we're seeing like a double image of you.
Yeah, me too.
Just at the bottom, when you're, you should have a stop. Yeah, I think that has fixed it.
Ah, okay.
Excellent.
Don't know what I did, but there you go. Okay, are we all right now?
You're good to go now.
Okay, right. So as I was saying, our time is precious. So the things that I was wanting to talk about tonight are talking about what is clutter, because it is different for every single person. We all look at it in different ways. I'm also going to show you how to actually declutter, because that's very important, but how to do it in a mindful but also an ethical way. And what I mean by ethical is not just discarding it and throwing it away. We're really passionate about finding good homes for unwanted stuff. So there'll be lots of resources that I can share with you tonight on how to find good homes for your unwanted stuff. After those first two topics, we'll have a quick break so that you can ask me any questions, but I've also got a couple that I might throw at you, which also helps me on how I can direct this session tonight. Once we've had our first break, we'll go on and we'll talk about the cost of clutter, because it's not just a financial burden, but it's also a mental, social, health and well-being, and also there's a huge impact on our planet by the consumption of clutter. Then the next one, which is really important, is how you can identify your clutter. It's up to you to decide what your clutter is, not anybody else. Nobody else has the right to tell us what to get rid of. So the power is in your hands as to what you get rid of. Then we're going to use a system which I've developed called the 10 R's. Now, I know it's 10, it sounds like a lot. I don't, even if you just take on one, that's fantastic. So we'll talk about how the 10 R's, we'll work through those, and I've got examples that I can show you. And also, again, more on how we can responsibly dispose of our unwanted stuff. And of course, then we'll do some more Q&A, and I will be sharing lots of free resources to help you ethically declutter so that you can live the life that you really, really want. So to start with, would like to share a concept with you that you may be aware of, and I call it the clutter spiral. It's where our homes, they don't come with elastic side walls, do they? When they become stuffed, they become rather uncomfortable and they don't function well. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by a clutter spiral. My very first job 10 years ago, I was working as a professional eco organiser, and when I was working with my client, we started to bring things out of the kitchen cupboard, out of the pantry, and we were putting it onto the kitchen bench, but we were placing them in like with like. So when you do this yourself, when you open up a cupboard and you take things out, group them together, what you do then is you actually start to see what you have. You also start to see what you have, but you don't use, and that is the clutter. Now, what we were able to establish with this client was that when we were working on just the jars of jam, we put the red jam together and the purple jam together. But when we got to the apricot jam, we noticed that she had 36 jars of apricot jam. 36, which is quite a lot. And she said to me, Tanya, I didn't know I had them, so I just went and bought more. So that's an example of the clutter spiral. So when you do start to declutter, bring things out and place them like with like. So that's one of the first tips that I can give you, like with like. Now, when you do that, you're going to save time, money, energy. So the next point is knowing why you want to do this. This is really, really important. There's no point doing something if we don't know why we want to do it. You may want to do things like create a vision board of what your life is going to look and feel like once you've got rid of the clutter, how you're going to function in that space. Or you may not even be you may not be a visual person. You may want to just get out a pen and paper and start to write down some thoughts on how you want your space to look and to feel like. To think about the dreams, the things that you want to do in your home. And, look, this is just an example of something that I have. I've grabbed this quote from somebody. This is not something that I've written or anything that my clients have shared with me. I won't share with you their personal thoughts because that is not the right thing to do. But here's just a great quote that I think sort of summarizes it. And it's, the best and the most important things in the world cannot be seen or even touched, but they must be felt by the heart. And that's a quote by Helen Keller. So know your why. That's the next thing that you need to do to be able to declutter. This all happens before we even go and even think about buying containers, because there's no point buying containers if you don't know why you're doing it. So the next thing is, what is clutter? I sort of define it as anything that is no longer useful or relevant or adds value to your life. And it's sometimes things that stop us from living the life that we want. So when we know our why, we can be looking around and thinking, well, I want to be able to maybe have friends over to my home again, but I can't do it at the moment because I have this clutter, I'm embarrassed or something like that. So think about, maybe even just look around the space that you're sitting in right now. You're sitting on the lounge or you're sitting at a desk or something like that. Have a look around at your space, and can you see anything right now that no longer adds value to your life? That's a question I'm going to ask you. Okay. So yeah, what doesn't add value to your life? Because if you're laughing now, you're looking at something that's going, yeah, okay, you are giving me the irrits, you are clutter, which is great. That's exactly what we want to do. Okay, so I'm going to now try and share a slide with you and hopefully not, botch everything up here. But what I'm going to do now is bring up a slide for you. This is the only one on actually the method that I use to declutter. So let's see how we go, shall we? Oh, where'd it go? Here we are. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see that perfectly, Tanya.
Oh, yay! I've achieved something. Okay.
The only thing you might want to do is start the slideshow just so it's a little bit bigger, because at the moment we can see your whole PowerPoint screen.
Okay, so what did I want? Sorry, what was that?
So start the slideshow.
Start the slideshow. Okay. Oh, yeah, here we go. Start. It's only one slide.
That's okay. It'll just make it a little bit bigger for our viewers.
Thank you. Lessons on the run from Melissa. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, what you're going to need to do is, first of all, create a space to declutter. So a bench, a table or something like that. It's important not to do it in cramped conditions because depending on how large your job is, you've got to sort of maintain your momentum. You're going to need a rubbish bag because not everything can be recycled or repaired or upcycled or donated. There will be some things that do need to go, and they are going to go to landfill. We need to start using that word. You're also going to need 3 containers, and one is for stay, donate, and return. Now, any sort of container will do. It doesn't matter what it is. We don't want to go and buy stuff. And you'll need your recycle bin. Now, what the stay container is for, when you start to declutter, always start small. Don't start on huge, big project. And it could be something like you're sitting at your desk now and there may be a container sitting there full of pens that, you know, just half of them don't work. So always start small. So if you open up a drawer, anything that you find that you want it to stay in that drawer, you want to put those contents into the stay container. The donate, well, that's pretty obvious. We want to be able to donate quality items. So anything that is in good condition, we place it into the donate container. The return. Now, this is the key to really completing the project, I would say. Anything that you find as you're decluttering that needs to be returned to another place within your home, it may need to be returned to somebody else that's left it in your home. Those items, just place them in that returns container. Do not, and I stress this, do not pick that thing up and then take it off to, say, the other room where it should be housed, because I guarantee you what you will do is you will get to that other space and you will start decluttering there. And you never actually finish where you started. So this is the critical thing. Only do the returns when you have completed the area that you are working in. Now, just going back to the donate a little bit, it's really important to get the donations out of the house as quickly as you possibly can. Because leaving them at the front door for a month, I guarantee you, you are going to go back through those things and you're going to start to pull out the contents and say, I will lose the weight and I will get those clothes back on. Or you'll start to say things like, oh, I spent a lot of money on that, I can't get rid of it. So if you've made the painful decision, sometimes it is painful, to let go of this stuff, then it's really important that it's out of the house as soon as you possibly can. So that explains how to ethically declutter, and I'll take some questions soon. So before I move on, just to check with you again, Melissa, if you don't mind, is it just the little X box stop sharing I click?
That is absolutely it, Tanya.
Gosh, I'm getting good at this, aren't I?
You're going to be a star by the end of tonight.
Oh, I'm just so good. You did not employ me for my IT skills, did you? Okay, let's move along. So right now, I would suggest that we unmute ourselves, but it's just questions I would like you to think before you do. Is look around where you are right now, and is there something that you can see that does not add value to your life? And the other thing, somebody's shaking their head, which is great. I'm really pleased about that. And the other thing, and this is just completely, you know, it's entirely up to you if you don't want to do it, but if anybody would like to share their why, because sometimes people struggle to know what their why is. So if you are comfortable, and I'm only saying if you are, maybe you would like to share your why. So we might just take questions for about maybe 5 minutes and then we can move on.
So if you do have a question, just so everybody doesn't jump on at the same time, if you want to raise your hand and then I can call on people, just because otherwise if everyone's talking at the same time, it can get a little bit hectic in here. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or to pop it in the chat, and then I'll let you know. Oh, everyone's just looking at the chat as well. Oh, no questions as yet.
Oh, okay. So nobody's looking around their space. There's no clutter.
I will go. I have a massive cat scratching post in my corner that my cat will not go near. She loves the old one that's falling to pieces. And so I have this big, beautiful one and she refuses to use it.
Ah, so then maybe that's something that you could donate to an animal welfare centre or something like that.
Great idea. Now, Brian, you have your hand raised, so please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, look, I tend to love clutter, you know, like I feel like a little rat and surround myself with stuff, and it feels very comforting, you know, like I need a psychiatrist or what.
Look, this is not about being a minimalist or anything like that. You know, people say to me, your house must be immaculate. And I say, no, but what I can find what I want when I want. And, you know, I've worked with some clients that we never get rid of anything, but we organise it so that they can find it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
yeah, it's just about, you know, life is too short to be looking for stuff, I say. We need to be able to get our stuff when we want it so that we can get on and do the things that we really want to do.
Because I've been a bit of a hoarder, and as you get older, you realise you haven't got enough time to touch every single thing you got, you know?
Well, I suppose if you think about the things that you do enjoy doing and maybe just looking back at those other things that you don't touch and you don't enjoy and maybe think about, well, would somebody else really enjoy them? Is there somebody in your life or your family that you could sort of think, well, you know what, they've always admired it. Maybe I'll pass it on to them.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Look, if you saw all the stuff that I've got, you'd put me on that show, Buried Alive.
Look, I mean, there are, if depending on the situation, look, you know, if you are, there are people out there that do actually work within that area of hoarding, but it's not an area that I work in. But I'm happy to if you are looking and you need some resources, I'm happy to share them later if you feel that you need that sort of support.
Well, at least I haven't I've stopped picking up stuff from hard rubbish things on the side of the road and stopped picking up and buying things. So I think I'm in the right direction.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So do we have any more questions or should we move on?
There are no more questions that I can see.
Okay.
Oh, no. Anna, you've got something you'd like to share?
Hey, so this is, I've got my kids with me, but the beautiful pop-up cards and the birthday cards they receive, we seem to hold on to for months on end, and that's something that I struggle with.
Okay, so it is about setting limits because as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, our homes don't come with elastic side walls. And when they become stuffed with things, they don't function really well. And it does start to sort of get us down a little bit. So maybe it's about creating some sort of a memory box and setting limits on how many of those things that you keep, because obviously we can't keep everything because we just wouldn't function. So choosing the most favorite, the best, or whatever, or even setting limits on how long you keep them for. Other people have sort of made up little memory boxes for each child, but they've set those limits on how many they keep. I mean, there are other things of digitizing. You could do that maybe, scanning them and keeping them like that. But I mean, you need to be realistic about what times you have available to yourself to do that sort of thing with, you know, obviously busy with children and that. So it does take discipline to declutter and to stay clutter free. So again, it goes back to that why am I doing this? You know, some people are saying, you know, I spend more time doing housework than doing the stuff that I really want to do, and that's spending it with the people that I love. So it's about going back to that why am I doing it? Does that help? Okay, good. I think I've lost you there. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. We might just keep it rolling. So let's talk about the cost of clutter, because there is a financial impact on clutter, but also there's a health and well-being. In a study done out of the US by a professional organising association over there, they found that the average person's wasted 4.3 hours a week looking for paper. So that's something you could think about, is what would you do if you had an extra 4.3 hours a week to yourself? Absolutely to yourself. What would you do with that time? I know what I'd be doing. Now, the other thing that we have found in studies out of Australia, that the surveys they did was they found out that the average Australian family spent around about $6,600 a year on items that they deemed to be clutter. So that's a fair investment, is $6,623, sorry. They also found that we spend on average around about $963 a year on Christmas gifts, yet $620 worth of that were considered unwanted gifts. So we're going out and buying stuff for people that don't even need it or want it. And what happens to it? It usually gets pushed to the back of the cupboards, never to be used or seen of again. So there's a fair bit of money tied up in clutter. They also found that if we stacked every box of clutter around the coastline of Australia, it would go around the country about 6 times. So let's think about the space that this stuff takes up. We know some people hire storage units to accommodate their stuff, and we fill our rooms with stuff. So what room in your home would you say is the most cluttered? That's something that you might want to think about, and we can discuss at our next break. Oh, excuse me. And when we talk about other forms of waste, there's things such as food waste. And did you know that it takes 500 litres of water to produce a kilo of potatoes, and 50,000 litres of water to produce a kilo of beef, and 2,000 litres of water to produce a kilo of rice? Yet 1 in 5 shopping bags of food goes in the bin. And in Victoria alone, each household throws away an estimated $3,800 worth of edible food. So we've got there's a lot of cost involved in clutter. Now, importantly, we need to start talking about how do you identify your clutter, because nobody should come into your home and tell you what to get rid of. You need to be able to stand there and say, yes, that is clutter, and I'm prepared to let go of it. And here's some questions that you can ask yourself so that you can start to identify your clutter. Again, as you're sitting there, you can already start visualizing and looking at things. So have a look around the space that you're in now and look at something and just say, is it practical? Is that thing practical? And does it warrant space in my life? Not just in my home, but does it warrant space in my life? And also you might want to be thinking, if I got rid of it, what would I miss about it? And you might want to think, well, if it was taken away from me, would I race out and try and replace it? And you also might like to just say, look, do I like it? Does it make me feel good? Why do we hang on to stuff if it doesn't make us feel good? And importantly, what's worth more, the object or the opportunity for you to simplify life? So they're really, to me, they're really important questions to ask when we're starting to declutter. Is it practical? I was working with one lady and we were actually just decluttering around the kitchen stove top. And by the kitchen stove top, we generally have a container where we put wooden spoons and all sorts of things, don't we, our utensils. In this particular situation, this container was chock-a-block full of spatulas and wooden spoons and things like that. And I asked her to pick up every single one, just one at a time, pick it up. And there was one that she picked up, and she picked it up like it was really awkward. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "It's too big for my hand. It's just a big utensil and it's too big for my hand." She said it was a gift. I've never used it. She said, "This is clutter." So it went. That was not practical to her. So you want to be looking around your home and saying, is it practical? Okay. That's a fairly deep question, that one, but I think it's a really important one to think about. So is it practical? Does it warrant space in your life? And if you got rid of it, what would you miss about it? They're things that are pretty good things to sort of keep in mind when you are going through this process. Okay, so should we have another little quick break just to sort of answer a few questions now that I've got the juices flowing a bit?
Again, if anybody would like to raise their hand if they have a question, or even if they want to share one, there's been a few stories kind of popped in the chat. If anybody would like to share those stories.
Yes, please. I like stories.
So, Carolyn, you had a story about a task that your husband did about your photos. Would you like to jump on and share that one? Oh, I think Carolyn just got kicked out of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
We've got lots of spare bedrooms are the ones that people have the most clutter in, and I know I've got one or possibly two of them.
Yeah, look, the spare bedroom is a natural transition. Things go from, say, the kitchen, the lounge room and everything to the spare bedroom. That's where they go. And when they finish there, they go to the garage. And when they're finished there, they either go to, sometimes if people have a holiday house, they go there, or they hire a storage unit to accommodate stuff they don't use, need or want, which, you know what, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So my tip is to always start small. Start with that one drawer. Don't look at the big overall picture because it can become overwhelming. So start with, you know, like it could be a drawer in the bathroom. It could be a drawer in the bedroom. It could be even just the bedside table. What's the first thing that you see in the morning when you wake up, when you open your eyes? If you open your eyes and the first thing that you see is clutter, I suggest that is where you start decluttering. Because when we wake up and see clutter, there's no mental break or visual break from clutter. We go to sleep in clutter and we wake up in clutter. It is really important to do that, to give your eyes a visual break from it, to have that space. And also to the other really good area to start is like the front door, or that wherever you leave your house most frequently, the back door or the front door, because the entrance areas are generally the smallest space in the house. And when we declutter that space, we step through a clear clutter-free space to go outside. And when we step back into the house, we're stepping into a clutter-free zone. And it just lifts that emotional stuff off you. So, well, here's a question just to sort of get you going. What does life look like without the clutter? I can hear a microphone crackle there.
We've got a comment in the chat, more calm.
Yep. Yep, calm. And what sort of things do you think you do in that calm space? Yeah.
Less decisions to be made, what to wear, etc. Less
Yep.
arguments over missing things, less choice. Easier to find things.
Oh, yay! The other thing I'd just like to mention too is that never try and declutter somebody else. I always have this thing. I've had people come to my talks and they're standing there going, "Oh, it's not my clutter, it's theirs." You always get this finger going to somebody beside you, and it's like, well, you can't declutter somebody else's possessions. They need to make the decisions on what stays and what goes, and because something so insignificant to you may mean so much to them that you really have to be very, very careful about how you approach it. And I always say to my clients is, sit down and have a cup of tea and talk about it. If it's causing some sort of friction, sit down and have a chat. One of a lady who attended one of my workshops, she said, "My daughter left home years ago and she left all her stuff here for me to look after." And I said, "Well, why don't you sit down and have a cup of tea with her and discuss how you feel about it and how it's taking up your valuable space?" So she did. And she rang me and she said, "It worked a treat." And I said, "Why? What happened?" She said, "We sat down, had a cup of tea, and then we went into the spare room and we looked at it. And her daughter said to her, 'Mum, I don't know why you are hanging on to it. I don't want it.'" So they let it go. But the angst that had built up over this stuff because they hadn't had a conversation was incredible. It lasted for years and years and years. And as soon as they started talking about it, that pressure was released. Okay, we'll move on. So how do we move from mindful decluttering to reducing waste? So the thing is, it's important not to try to do everything. Just do what you can and do what fits into your lifestyle. And also don't try and reinvent the wheel. Maybe adapt the systems that you have going at the moment rather than just throwing it all out and going, "I'm going to go with this method." So just do what you can. And I really, really stress this, is that there's so many people out in the social media scene that are trying to be the eco warriors, and it's literally impossible to do that. Sure, I mean, I've been working towards zero waste, but I'm not there, and I don't try to be there, but I do what I can. And I think we should be encouraging people for just doing what they can. But what we do, the way that we do it is we use what I called the 10 R's. Now, the 10 R's, it does sound like a lot. And as I said, if you can just pick up one, that's fantastic. I've taught the 10 R's now to over 8,000 people, and everywhere from the Australian bush to the boardrooms of Collins Street in Melbourne to the Sydney Opera House, and it's now being taught at a university in Scotland. So, number one is rethink, and it's very important when we stop and pause and rethink before we buy something. And if we just stop and pause, it allows for our emotions to catch up with our rational thoughts, because the marketing want us to buy this stuff. But if we stop and pause and shop with intention rather than on impulse and say, do I need it? Do I really need to buy this? And will it add value to my life? So we're using a lot of those things that we were talking about when we were decluttering. Now, you may also want to say, is there an equivalent with less packaging? Why do I buy that stuff with all that packaging that I'm going to throw away when I could get this one with less packaging? But also we could look at it and say, how can I reuse the packaging? And what's really, really important is when you're looking at something, at buying something and saying, do I have similar already? So that we can get out of that clutter spiral that we were talking about before. So that's number one. Number two is responsible. And there's 3 points that I would like to share with you. The number one rule is don't store other people's stuff. It's their responsibility, not yours. I was working with a client who was moving from the Mornington Peninsula, where I am based, to Cairns. And there was a table in her garage. And I said, what's happening with the table? And she said, oh, yeah, it's not going, but I've moved it 5 times. And I said, it's not yours? She said, no. I said, well, now's the time you ring that person and you say, I'm moving. It has to be picked up. If you don't, then it's going to the charities. And when she rang that client, that friend, the friend had even forgotten where the table was. So the golden rule is don't store other people's stuff. It's their responsibility, not yours. Number 2 is when we do donate, let's make sure that whatever we donate is in really good condition. That's our responsibility. Charities spend $15 million a year disposing of rubbish. And there's ways that we can responsibly donate too. If we donate things that are needed at the moment, like things that are in season, that's a great thing. The other way that we can be responsible to dispose of stuff is always check your local council, see what they can do for you. There could be a lot of resources there for free. So they could, you know, most councils offer you several free hard waste pickups a year. So check out your local council and what they can provide you with. Now, the other thing is on my website, ecoorganiser.com.au, I have one page which has listed on it over 100 different links that you can click on to responsibly dispose of your unwanted stuff. And all those links are free. So this is another way that you can be responsible, because your stuff could be used to help somebody else. Number 3 is refuse. You know, it is okay to say no thank you to stuff. The buy one, get one free, the goodies bags, all those sorts of things. It's okay to say no to those sorts of things. And there's another professional organiser around. His name is Peter Walsh. He's out of America. He's an Australian, but he lives in America. And I love this quote that he has. And it says, if the price is the only thing that is appealing, why buy it? So it's refusing that temptation and saying, I don't need this stuff. And the other thing that we can refuse is greenwashing. Now, greenwashing is not something that you left green in the washing machine and turned everything else green. Greenwashing is when a product is marketed to us that is supposed to be eco-friendly when it's not. My very first example of seeing this was some 15 years ago, maybe longer, when I worked in the plastics industry. And it was at that time that the supermarkets were introducing us to the green bag. Now, I've got one here. It's not green, it's blue, but you know what I mean. This particular bag. This was marketed to us as a green bag, when in fact it's made out of woven polypropylene, and that is an oil-based product. So there's lots of things out there that is greenwashing, and I'm a big advocate for calling it out. So if you're ever wanting to find out about that stuff, you can check me out on Facebook. I'm often sort of popping up with some greenwashing things so that we can be educated on if we're wanting to reduce waste and we're wanting to move away from plastics, from oil-based plastics. I'm a big one for sort of showing examples of what is a plant-based plastic and what is an oil-based plastic. So anything that sort of says degradable or biodegradable, they're an oil-based plastic. So there you go. I've confused the situation already, haven't I? Okay, so that's number 3 is refuse. Number 4 is repurpose. So rather than going and buying stuff, more stuff, we look around your home to find out what you've got, and so that we can repurpose things. Why buy more stuff when you've already invested in things? So I've got a couple of examples. I'm just going to lean across to my little table and grab them for you. Okay, so here's a chocolate box. Now this is a timber chocolate box. All those little compartments, that's storage. So this could be repurposed into storing things. So Brian, you were saying you have a lot of stuff, but sometimes it's about getting organized. Have a look around your home and see what containers you have, and maybe you could start to organize them in a certain way. So that's just one thing there. The other thing I have here, and these make fantastic storage, are muffin trays. So if your house is, your kitchen has a few of these in here and you don't use them anymore, again, this is potential storage. These make great drawer dividers in the office. You can have paper clips, you can have elastic bands in each little compartment. So repurposing is another great way of reducing waste. And there's one other I just want to share with you. I'm currently working with some cafes down here on the Mornington Peninsula that want to move away from single-use coffee cups, but they also want to move away from the ceramic reusable cups. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Ceramics, any of your cups, your crockery, any of those sorts of things, when they're chipped and broken, they have to go in your landfill bin. They cannot be recycled. The other reason is the ceramic cups are quite expensive. So you could be looking at between $20 to $30 for a reusable cup. So what we've developed is we've come up with this idea of reusing our waste, and anybody can make this. This is a glass jar. That is it. Any sort of glass jar. We've placed some elastic bands around the middle so that I don't burn my fingers and the barista doesn't burn their fingers. And we're setting up a return system, or if you turn up to get your coffee and you haven't got your cup, you just grab one. It's free. So this is something that's definitely repurposed, and we call it the hiccup. So maybe you want to make yourself a hiccup and go in. My baristas around here are doing it. So that's just something else of repurposing. Now, moving on to number 5 is reorganize. And this is just a story I'd like to share with you about a client of mine. Carla and David, they are a blended family. So both married, blended now with a couple of kids. Their mission was, or their goal was, to create a home that all their children wanted to be in. But they were in a small home and they really needed to declutter and reorganize their home. After following the 10 R's, within the first week, they reduced their grocery bill by $50, effectively saving them $2,600 a year. They then went on to reorganise their lounge room living area space, that they could actually open the windows so they could naturally ventilate their home, and it allowed more light to come in. By doing that, they did not have to use their air conditioner during summer, which saved them more money. After they decluttered, they then went on and sold items online, which made them another $800. The kids even got into it, and they started to use number 3. They started to refuse new toys. Rather, they said to their mum and dad, I want to save that money for that family holiday, because that was one of their goals. They wanted to create a home that they could all fit into and wanted to be in, and they wanted to save money for a family holiday. 5 years on, I received a photograph of them, of the whole family on the Gold Coast on holidays, which was just wonderful. They achieved their goals that they set down, and they worked together as a family. There was one instance where Carly wanted to order a pizza one night for dinner, and the kids said, no, Mum, because you can't recycle the pizza boxes because they're too oily. So it was just a really great outcome when they set their goals and they went on and they did it. It was fantastic. So just by reorganising our homes, you know, it does make financial sense as well, because building bigger and bigger homes just to accommodate staff doesn't make financial or environmental sense. But reorganising is cost-free, and it does make the world of difference. Number 6 is repair. Now, we live in sort of a designed obsolescence, an era of designed obsolescence. Things are designed to break down. But I'm here to buck the system. I'd rather have the right to repair. So there's this wonderful thing called repair cafes, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. And it's a wonderful idea where you take your things to have them repaired. You either learn how to repair or somebody will do it for you, and it doesn't cost you anything. But the whole idea is to extend the life of the product. And it also helps with community engagement. People come together with different skills and they meet each other and they share their skills and they reduce waste to landfill. Now, one of the things that I did was I had some beautiful crystal glasses and I was very naughty and I put them in the dishwasher and they chipped on the rim. So I thought, oh, what am I going to do here? I've heard you can have crystal repaired. So I went to my local glazier, the people that make your windows, and I asked, can we repair them? And what he did was he ground down the glass, the rims of the glass, and those glasses are repaired and they're used. So at Eco Organiser, we try to get people to sort of rethink and think, oh, you know, how can I repair this stuff before we throw things out and go and buy more stuff? Number 6 is reduce. We definitely want to look at ways of reducing clutter, but also reducing our waste. And one of the things that we are advocates, big advocates for, are the Red Cycle program, which is you can recycle soft plastics through the supermarket, so through your Coles and Woolworths. Now, my container this is where I put soft plastic. So I found this in the back of the cupboard after I decluttered. Now, inside of this, we place all sorts of plastic, soft plastics. You can put express post envelopes, muesli bags, pasta bags, any of those sorts of things that don't go in your curbside. I place them in here. When this container is filled, I then empty it and I go to the supermarket and I drop it off in the Red Cycle bin. Now, all this stuff gets recycled into park benches or underground covers for cabling and those with warning messages and those sorts of things. So all that stuff can now be recycled. It doesn't have to go into landfill. So you might want to check out Red Cycle and have a look at the full range of what they can and can't recycle. Now, they can even recycle some brands of Glad Wrap, but they only take certain brands. So, moving on. Reuse, of course. We have the hiccup, which I am going to plug, the hiccup. And we also have another thing you can do is when I mentioned before, shop with intention and shop with your eyes. When I go to buy something, I'm always looking at the container and how I can reuse it. So, for instance, I buy a product. I bought this container, I bought a product. It was a different product inside, but now I just reuse this same container. So I take this to my bulk fill store and I have it refilled with my cayenne pepper. So I'm buying with intention to be able to reuse my containers, so I don't have to go out and buy new containers all the time. So think about when you go shopping, how can you reuse the packaging is another way to effectively reduce waste and save you money because you're not having to buy the containers. Number 9 is recycle. And there's all different sorts of ways that we can recycle at home. So we've got obviously composting and worm farms and those sorts of things. If you want to do the composting, but well, if you want to sort of recycle your food waste, but you're not interested in composting, there's an app called Share Waste, and that's where you can connect with somebody within your community that may have a compost bin that's looking for food scraps, or somebody that might have some chooks that are looking for extra food for their chooks. And it's a way that we can connect and share our waste and recycle our waste. So I've got lots of other examples, but I'll share those in our sort of open session with you. But I've got a table full of stuff here that I can share with you. Okay. Number 10, the last one, is reward. It's really, really important that as you start to declutter your home and your life, that you build in rewards for yourself along the way. If you've got a massive job to do, don't expect to get it done in the weekend. If it's taken you 10 years to get to the situation that you're in now, you are not going to get it done while you're listening to the footy on the weekend. So when you've done one drawer, then you move on to the next drawer, and then you move on to the next drawer. Take a break and go and reward yourself and do something that you enjoy. And once you've done a bank of drawers, move on to the cupboard next to it, and then the cupboard next to it, and the drawers or the shelves or whatever it is. And soon you're going to have one whole wall done. So it's important to finish a space before you move on to another. Then you can have one zone in your home that's clutter-free, and stand in that space and just feel, just take note of how that feels to you. Do you like that way, that space? Can you change that space or whatever? But when we reduce clutter and we reduce waste, we reduce our carbon footprint, because everything that we buy comes with a carbon footprint. Somewhere in the world we've cut down trees to make paper that's been shipped here, or we've dug up coal from this country and we've sent it over the other side of the planet to be made into stuff that we buy back. So when we reduce clutter, we reduce our carbon footprint. And that's just something to sort of think about. So I have been talking well and truly long enough. I'd really like to open up the mics and take any questions that you have before I start to share some other ways of recycling and lots of free resources. So
Jenna had a question in the chat, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question, Jenna.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I was just wondering your thoughts on man rags. Have you heard of man rags?
Yes, I did, and they were one of the ones I was going to mention. Yeah, Man Rags is a fantastic business that's just started in Melbourne. It's where you can recycle your old clothes and shoes, and basically you pay for the courier service to. I haven't actually really I've spoken to their general manager a couple of times, but I've actually want to put the thing in process myself to actually follow it through so I can explain it properly. But you send your old clothes off there and you get a credit, and with that credit you can get some underwear that they make, or socks or things like that. So you are earning something for your recycling. So it's a great idea. I love Man Rags. So thank you very, very much for mentioning it.
No worries.
Have you tried it? Have you tried it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're the expert. You should explain it to us.
Oh no, I just saw you didn't mention it, so I was like, oh, I'll just see if she knows about man rags.
Awesome. Yeah, I do. I'm actually hoping to do a blog on them very soon. So yeah, they're great.
I will read it.
Good.
And I have just popped a link into the chat to Man Rags, and I also popped a chat in there to I popped a link in there to Red Cycle and also to Compost Revolution as well, where you can get subsidised compost bins and worm farms from your local council. So there's a few links I popped in there, and I also popped some links to some books that we have in the library collection as well. So you can follow those links and it will take you straight through to reserve them. I didn't mention at the start, and I should have, that Tanya's book is coming out very, very soon. We have ordered it, hopefully once it comes out. So it's Ethically Declutter Your Home in 30 Days. Just move the book a little bit to your left. I think we can cut off a little bit the other way. That way, excellent. So we've ordered some for the library as well. So when we get that in, we'll have that available as well. So there's some other books in the chat, but also Tanya's book is coming soon as well. So just let you know that there's a few links in the chat if you wanted to have a look. But otherwise, back over to you, Tanya.
Oh, are there any more questions?
Just having a look. People have been talking about children's clothes swaps.
Yep.
Do you know of any?
Oh, no, start your own. Just start your own. You know, I mean, these things are available to us that we can, if we don't have anything local, let's start our own. There's a new charity, I don't know if it's a charity, but it's a not-for-profit. And I love this idea, and I would love to see it go national. And it's actually a kitchen library. So we have things like tool libraries where we can borrow things that we don't actually have to own them. Well, a kitchen library, it's in Carlton. And I think this is fantastic for people that live in small apartments that don't have space to keep all their gadgets. Why not just go and borrow them? Why invest money in these big machines or gadgets that we only use once? So, yeah, street libraries. So this is where, you know, I'm sure you know about a street library where there's a little container where books are kept and you can just go and borrow them, or you'll see them in cafes and that type of thing. Or, of course, you've got the library yourself, you know. But tool libraries, rather than buy tools that you only use once or twice a year, join a tool library. So there's lots of great things. Start, like you said, a clothes swap for kids, but also why not for yourself? Start doing clothes swaps and things like that. The other thing that you can look at is think and act local. Look within your community. Hanging off my mailbox out the front of my house is another separate mailbox. That is just for my community. When they're out walking, because we're allowed to walk for an hour, 2 hours now, they drop off their toothpaste tubes and their toothbrushes, their plastic toothbrushes. And then I get them recycled through another not-for-profit called TerraCycle. And that's a fantastic resource. They do a lot of recycling of really weird things like coffee pods, like I mentioned, toothpaste tubes, brushes. They're the only place I know that you can recycle masks. That is a paid service, that one. So that would be for businesses, say, you know, your big stores where everybody has to wear a mask and that, they would pay for that service. But they have an amazing range. That's a link you might want to put up too, is TerraCycle. But all these things you can actually find through my useful links page on my website as well. So,
just while we're talking about recycling programs, I just would also, obviously libraries are closed at the moment, but once they do reopen, we have recycling stations in our libraries and community centres for x-rays, batteries, mobile phones, printer cartridges. I'm sure I've probably forgot light bulbs as well. So that's, and some of our community centres have TerraCycle boxes as well.
Oh, wow. That's great. I don't have anything like that, so good on you. Okay, there's a couple of other things that you may not be aware of, and that is you can recycle bread tags. So bread tags, you know, when you buy, you've got that little plastic thing. So this is a recycling system that I have in my home, and that's just obviously a plastic container where these go in. I am fortunate enough that my local general store has a drop-off point. They gather up all the drop-offs and they send them to a company in South Australia, and these are made into wheelchairs for kids. So that's another thing that we can do, is we can recycle bread tags to go ahead and help children in need. And also too, how often do we get little bits of metal around the house? So we could be getting things like, this is just off like alfoil, so that metal strip off there. We've got bottle caps, we've got mystery key rings that really, we've got pegs where the wire is twisted and broken, or we've got paper clips that you can't bend back into it. If you place any of your metal waste into a metal container, and when it's filled, press it together, you might need to get somebody strong or pliers or something, that can go into your recycle bin, because it's a larger metal container. And when it gets to the recycling centres, they can actually detect a larger thing than small things. The small things just get flicked off and never get recycled. But by putting like with like, you can recycle things. And you can also do that with alfoil. Scrunching it into a decent sized ball, it can be detected by the machines at the recycling centre. Any slithers aren't, they are just blown off to the side. But you cannot be putting in things that have had your garlic bread in it. It needs to be relatively clean. The other thing I just wanted to mention too now is that, because you've got all those fantastic facilities at your local library and community centres, is pens. Pens can be recycled at Officeworks. So that's a new one that's out. And I know that, who is it? Officeworks is also, they will also do all of your e-waste, your mobile phones, ink cartridges, and those sorts of things. Now, the ink cartridges from Officeworks are now being used to build roads in Victoria. So because they're plastic, they're full of oil, and a lot of oil goes into road base, and they use a lot of waste in road base, but they're actually starting to use ink cartridges, which is fantastic. Now, there's also one other thing I wanted to share. I keep on saying that a lot. There's lots of things I want to share. Anyhow, receipts. You know, receipts that you get? These have to go to landfill. They cannot be recycled. These are covered with plastic. It's called BPA, and that's for the thermal printing. So these, they have to go into your landfill bin. You cannot recycle them.
A great comment on that. When you're at the library, you can ask to have your receipts emailed to you rather than print out one of those receipts, so you don't have to get one of those ones. The other thing I did pop a link into the chat for is Green Collect, which is a local organisation that you can donate all your stationery back to them. But when you're looking for stationery, you can go and buy that stationery back. So it's a really great way. If you do have drawers full of pens, you know it's going to somewhere, and then people can go and pick them up from there as well. So it's a local. They're in Braybrook and Yarraville, so not too far from us.
They are fantastic. I would love to see them open up depots all around the place. Now, also too, there is a new recycling logo system that's coming out, and it's pictorial, which is fantastic. So for instance, this jar here, I know you're not going to see this very well, but I'll just point it out. On the back here, it has a logo, which are pictures. It says the jar, and it has the recycle logo. So that goes in the recycle bin. The plastic lid, again, that goes in the recycle bin. Now, when you this had like a foil cap on it. So this is like you peel it off. This is to keep your things fresh. That, it says, goes into your rubbish. So that's a new system that's being developed. So when you buy a product, you can just look on the back, and that gives you more information on how you can recycle. This has been developed by the Australian Packaging Covenant and Planet Arc, who I'm one of the ambassadors for. So that's just a new one that's coming out. They will also have different sort of the same pictures, but could be slightly different message. So there is one that will actually say return to store, which will be your green waste, your red cycle option. So that's just another new one that's coming out as well. So so just to sort of to recap about the decluttering, always start small. That's the key. And create your space, have your containers, your different containers, sort through them, and you make the decision on what stays and what goes. And then only put back into that space the contents from the stay container. And this is where you need to be strong with yourself. But always, give it a quick clean before you put your things back in there. So you can also use some repurposed containers to help you get organised in that space. So have a look around your home. Don't go and buy anything just yet. Use what you have, and then you will certainly save money as well and reduce your carbon footprint. And there are some myths about decluttering. And the number one myth is that you need to be, I need to be tidy. And no, you don't need to be tidy. It's just about being able to find what you want when you want. And that's the most important thing. The other thing is that there's this myth that if you have not used anything in 3 months, that you must dump it. And I disagree. We have the things that we love. We have things that make us feel good. We have things in our homes that we will never, ever use again, but they are so important to us. But this is the opportunity now to check that they are being stored properly. There's nothing worse than finding something that you love that's been eaten or anything like that. So this is a great opportunity to do that. The other myth is that you have to buy storage products to get organised. And let me tell you, just by buying storage products doesn't mean you're going to get organised. You actually have to do the work to get organised. So the storage boxes won't do it on their own. There's no such thing as the declutter fairy dust that's going to come through and do the house for you. You actually have to do the work yourself. And there's a couple of facts. Don't store other people's stuff. That's the golden rule. It's their responsibility. The other one is you cannot connect a trailer to a hearse. You can't take this stuff with you. If this stuff does not excite you now, it doesn't make you feel good, why hang on to it? Now, during this presentation, we've talked about money that we've spent on clutter and how we've wasted it. That has added up to $11,000, $11,043. So one of my parting questions to you, if we want to, have a little bit more question time, is what would you do now if you found $11,000 sitting on the kitchen bench? What would you do with it? Now, for the free useful links I was talking about, check out my website, ecoorganiser.com.au. There's blogs on there, tips. There's always the useful links page. That's a really important one to find good homes for your unwanted stuff. You can also check out the events that are happening like we're doing now. There's also my Facebook page, which I'm pretty active on, and that's really about solutions and ideas on there. Instagram is also there as well, and there's also Twitter. But definitely the useful links page, I get a lot of response to say that it's very useful, which is why we call it the useful links page. Really original. That is really my presentation for you. So I really am open to any more questions until Melissa kicks me off.
Anusha put a question in the chat. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If you wanted to unmute yourself, please feel free and jump on about your question about your daughter.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone down. I just want to know whether you had any suggestions on how to convince your 8-year-old.
Oh, no. Sorry. Oh, I shouldn't laugh, but it's true. I mean, it's just, look, I should have probably started with a disclaimer. I don't offer parenting advice, and I don't offer marriage counselling as well. Look, I mean, lead by example. I suppose that's one way of looking at it. Another way of sort of thinking is what are you trying to achieve? I think that's probably my right question. What are you trying to achieve?
I guess just she wants to keep everything that she's had since she was baby, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Someone in the chat gave me a suggestion. I can try that.
And would you you want to share that with us?
Yeah, it was just. I think she said just to discuss how you can share the toys with other children.
Yeah, and
love them.
And I've had clients that have done that. Their kids have really gotten involved, and they've sort of said, "No, Mum, now it's time for some other children to enjoy this because I don't need this anymore." So yeah, it depends on
I guess it was also in relation
a nice
to
way of doing it too, isn't it?
Yeah, your question where you said you can't declutter other people's stuff, and I thought, well, does that count for your children as well?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really is an individual thing too, you know. I'd probably just sort of sit down and have a chat about it and talk about why they want to keep them, I suppose. But you're sort of delving into an area. I don't work with children, so it's probably not really. I'm not going to.
No, that's fine. There is a few other suggestions in the chat. I will, which is similar to the previous one. Okay. I will work with those.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And just on that note, thank you to everyone for such an active chat tonight. There's been so much conversation in there, so we really appreciate everyone getting involved and giving suggestions to other people. There's a comment here that they loved those last 2 messages that you gave, Tanya. If you really love it, it's okay to keep it, and you have to make the choice yourself, no matter how many containers you buy to organise. That change needs to be you. So I think that has resonated with a few people tonight. Comment here again, I used to say to my child that there's other children who would really love it and that they don't have one, and donate items for the benefit of others. So those kind of reinforcing those conversations with the children. But so that's all the questions in there. If anybody else would like to raise their hand or ask a question, last thing we want is for the event to end and you go, oh, I really wanted to ask that and I didn't. If you're not comfortable coming on screen, that's fine. You can pop it in the chat and I can ask it for you, or you can just pop your microphone on. You don't need to actually turn your video on if you'd prefer not to. That's perfectly fine as well. Brian, did you have a question? So we've got...
Okay. You know, like I used to collect a lot of newspapers, and I used to be worried that I'm going to lose this good information, you know. And it's a different type of a clutter, you know, like cluttering yourself with information.
Yeah. And do you still do that now, Brian, or not?
No.
Okay.
Actually, the newspapers, they're so small these days, it's not worth buying.
Okay. So they're not adding value to your life anymore?
No, not really.
Okay, good.
I just wondering where all the people are. They're too shy to show their faces.
Look, I don't know. I'm only seeing about a couple of people myself, so. There's somebody waving, Joanne.
I enjoy your presentation. It's very good. And I'll start on something today.
Good. Where do you think you'll start?
Like you said, start in your bedroom, in the first thing you see when you wake up, you know.
Yeah.
So that might be a good start. Because I've got a tendency to like to leave all my books on the bed, you know, and that sort of stuff, you know. In the end, I got all these books there, and you know, it starts to stack up a bit, you know.
Hope you learned something.
No worries. Thanks for that.
We've had a question in the chat about accessing the link. So the links that I've popped into the chat won't be available, but if you wanted to reply to my email with the ones that you're interested in, I'm more than happy to send those links out. And just lots of thank yous in there as well. It is almost getting time for us to wrap up. So can I please copy the chat for us? Yeah, look, you know, if you definitely want to have that chat, I can send that out. Lots of useful information in there. And again, lots of thank yous in the chat coming through there, Tanya. So just before we do go, I just want to be aware, just want to make you aware of some of our upcoming events as well. So we've got a jam-packed schedule for September, October, November. So I'll just mention the next 3 coming up for the Enviro Centre. So next week on Wednesday, the 23rd of September, we've got Mindfulness for Trying Time. So this is going to be looking into how can we tap into what's within the accessibility of us in this lockdown. So in our backyard, in our homes, on our walks, how can we use some of these mindfulness techniques to help reduce some of the stress and anxiety that we might be feeling during this time? So it's next Wednesday, same time, 6:15. And then Thursday, the 1st of October, we've got a DIY natural beauty products. So there's a list of ingredients on our website and you can come along and we're going to make them all together. So we've got Lily from Mademoiselle Organics who's going to be going through how to make them and a little bit about what she does. So that'll be another great event. And then Wednesday, the 7th of October, we have Sand Talk. Now, this is by author Tyson Yunkaporta, and his book is about how Indigenous thinking can change the world. So they're the next 3 events coming up in the Enviro Centre, but we have lots of events both in the Enviro Centre and generally in the library as well. So jump onto our website and have a look. Lots of really great events, and I'm actually going to mention one more because Tanya was talking about mending before. We have Erin Lewis Fitzgerald coming on Wednesday the 14th of October, and she's going to be talking about modern mending and how we can fix and repair our clothes as well. So some really great events coming up. But thank you very much for your time tonight, Tanya. It's been such a wealth of information.
Well, I'm really sorry about the hiccup at the beginning. I don't know what was going on there, but thank you so much for having me. And I hope it's helped. And if you have any questions or anything like that, jump onto my Eco Organiser Facebook page. That's probably the best way of contacting me, or you can contact me through my website. I've got a contact page there. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask for advice or questions, or I can direct you where I may, you know, if I can't answer your questions, I will certainly handball you on in the nicest possible way.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for attending. We look forward to seeing you at another Enviro Centre event shortly. Just as we're saying our goodbyes and leaving, I'm just going to pop up one last slide for you. Just with a few links to some of our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and Instagram, and if you did want to send any feedback through. But thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your night. Stay safe out there, and we look forward to seeing you in one of our libraries again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Thank you.